Hello, this is Kira of Kira K Designs, and I'm going to demonstrate how to start my Wind and Sea shawl pattern. I'm not going to give you the whole pattern, so you will still need to get a copy, but I thought it'd be helpful for people to see how the shawl begins. This is hybrid crochet, also known as Tunisian crochet, which means that you need either a long straight hook or a hook like this that has a cord on the end. And then also, of course, you need your yarn. We're going to start with a slip knot in a foundation chain. I have a separate video for those, so if you've never done them, you might want to look that up. Here's my slip knot, and this shawl by design starts with just a few stitches to make it really easy for new folks to count their loops and make sure things are working. So I'm going to chain 7 stitches. Always a good idea to chain loosely if you can. You can see I've got some nice bits of air in my chain. It's a little uneven because I'm not a machine. That's fine. Don't stress if yours is as well. Now, my preference for working into the foundation chain is to work into the bumps on the back of the chain, and that's because it gives me a really nice bottom edge that matches the top edge. I'm going to skip my very first chain. Then I'm going to insert my hook into the next one under that bump, yarn over and drop a loop, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Now, if you don't have one of the long hooks or the hooks with a cord yet, you can certainly start your shawl with a regular hook. Just put a rubber band on the end, and that'll keep the stitches from falling off. So if you want to check your gauge, you can do that before you purchase the specialized hooks. Now, I've done my forward pass of my foundation row. It's a good time to count and just make sure you still have your 7 stitches. Then I'm going to do my return pass of the foundation row. In hybrid, also known as Tunisian crochet, every row has 2 passes, one where you're working from your dominant side to your non-dominant side, picking up lots of loops on your hook, and one where you kind of work back, getting rid of your loops. We don't turn the piece around, it's always going to have the right side facing. So my return pass here, I'm going to yarn over and draw through 1 loop. We don't call this out as a turning chain, but it really feels like one to me. And then you're going to yarn over and draw through 2 loops. And yarn over and draw through 2 loops repeatedly. So through 2, through 2, through 2, until you can't do it anymore because you'll only have 1 loop on your hook. So this is the end of my foundation row. Notice it looks a little bit loose and messy. That is completely how this craft looks. Each row is only going to look good once you put the next row on top of it, and the new row is always going to look a little funny. There is a method for finishing the top of the piece that takes care of that. Now, I'm going to be going under these vertical bars. I'm going to skip the very first one because I already have a loop coming out of it. I'm going to insert my hook into the next bar, and I do it like this from my dominant side, which for me is my right, just skimming the flat surface of the fabric to go under the bar, and then I yarn over and draw up a loop. And then into the next bar, yarn over, drop a loop. Again, you want to keep these a little bit loose. This fabric has a tendency to curl. Blocking does help a little bit, but the main thing that's going to minimize the curl is to keep your stitches loose. If I pulled them really tight, instead of my hook sitting on top of this row, it'd be kind of smooshed down on the side, and I'd be making a fabric that is shorter on the front than the back, and it'll curl a lot. Here again, I can count. I've got my 7 loops, so I'm ready for my row 1 return pass. I'm going to yarn over and draw through 1 loop. That's traditionally how we start. And then to start creating my lace pattern, I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to yarn over and draw through 6 loops. And that's going to kind of bunch up this little, it's almost like a shell design. And then I'm going to yarn over and draw through, that's not wrong, but we call it a chain stitch. So there's my 2 chains, and then yarn over and draw through 2 loops to finish. So here's the end of my row 1. I've done my forward pass and return pass. Now it's time for the row 2 forward pass. And the instructions here are to skip the first vertical bar and pick up a loop in each stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook into the first of my 2 chains, yarn over, drop a loop, go into my next chain, drop a loop. Now I've got one that I'm going to do right at the top of this little cluster that I made. Then there are 2 more chains. And then the final stitch is the vertical bar at the end. I I often go into just one of these strands. Some people find it looks neater for them to go under two. That's fine, you just don't want to go under the whole thing. You want to make sure that you are in the stitch. And here again, you can count and make sure you've got your 7 loops on your hook. Row 2 return pass is actually the same as the return pass of our foundation row before, where I'm going to yarn over and draw through 1 loop to get started, and then yarn over and draw through 2 loops repeatedly. And that is the stitch. I'm going to go ahead and just do another 2 rows so you can crochet along with me if you're doing that. So row 1 forward pass, I'm going to skip my first vertical bar, go to the next one, yarn over and drop a loop, and keep doing that till I'm all the way at the end of the row. Now this is a good time at the end of the row to stop and count. It's also the best time to admire your work. Take a photo for Instagram. Because not only do you not have that loose, weird top edge that you have after your return pass is over, but also this is recognizably this particular craft as opposed to traditional crochet. Now my row 1 return pass, I'm going to yarn over and draw through 1 loop to start, and then I'm going to chain 2. Kind of feels like making 3 chains, but there's a specific way that these patterns are written, so we don't call it out as that. Now I'm going to yarn over and draw through 6 loops, chain 2 again, and yarn over and draw through 2 loops to finish. So here's my row 1 is finished, and I'll do one more row 2 for you. I'm going to skip the first vertical bar, and I'll insert my hook into each stitch, yarn over and drop a loop. The first 2 are chains. The next one is the top of that cluster. Right here there's a nice gap under a single strand of yarn, and I've got 2 more chains, and then I've got my final stitch at the end, which is that vertical bar. Again, optionally you can go through 2 strands if that feels better and looks better to you. I've got my 7 loops, and then I'm going to do my return pass, yarn over and draw through 1, then yarn over and draw through 2 loops repeatedly. Now the pattern itself is going to have all the other instruction you need about when to increase, how to increase, when to decrease, how to decrease, how many stitches to get to, and all of that. But hopefully this video helped you to get started by seeing it in motion.